Hello.
Oh, hello, gamer. How are you?
I am good. How are you? How early is it for you?
It's like 10 a.m. normal
All right,
time.
it's not bad.
Yeah. Yeah. What time is it? Are we like 5 or 6 hours apart? I can't remember.
It is 4 p.m. right now, so it
Okay.
should be
Yeah.
6 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
My
that
state
full-time
is.
content creator peeps Yugioh?
I know, dude. I know. Oh man, that's an interesting development. Turns out when you hate your job enough, it makes you do some pretty risky things.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah, man, this is super fun. I'm super happy to jump on and talk about this because I like even when Genesis started, I knew I was going to enjoy the format, but I didn't think it
Hmm.
was going to be like a full pivot for me. But after playing it for so long, it's just, dude, it's so fun. I just love this format so much.
Have you full pivoted, or do you still follow Advanced Constructed?
I still follow Advanced Constructed. I still
Okay.
play it, of course, because the job that I'm currently in for the time being requires a lot of work hours throughout the week. I don't have a lot of time to like play Advanced and Master Duel as much as I would like to, but that's gonna change soon.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long you've been around since it's 10 a.m. right now for you, so you probably haven't watched the entire stream. But basically,
No, no.
we've been going over my locals footage that I did go to with Paleo this week, and just in general, I wanted to bring up some of the pros and cons maybe of Genesis format, or at least a lot of the things
Oh
that
yeah.
people are saying about Genesis, and maybe challenge you
Yep.
on that a little bit. Because I personally, I am caught a little bit in the middle because I do see some of the criticism, and for some of it I think it's fair enough, and for some of it I think it isn't, and I do enjoy Genesis whenever I play it, but I find it hard to, some of the stuff that people say I think is valid, but I
Oh
think
yeah.
I still wanted to discuss it and just see, what are the things that people are saying for and against Genesis format, which of that is valid and which of that isn't, and then maybe reach like some sort of conclusion on that kind of stuff. And also, like I said earlier, I have compiled some data to compare Advanced and Genesis, because of course one of the things that people are saying is it's not different enough from Genesis, from Advanced constructed gameplay, which I personally think is not true, and I want to
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about why that is.
Yeah. Definitely. Even though, like, I don't know, this is something that I do my best to really communicate whenever I talk about how much I like this format, is that there are really salient criticisms of Genesis that I think do need to be taken into account, and I do think need to be resolved by the people in charge of it.
Mhm.
But my big argument is that those criticisms are still not enough to warrant you not playing the format, even though those criticisms do exist. Like, I don't think those criticisms are a detriment to the overall health and gameplay of the format,
Right.
as much as some people say that they are. But I'm sure you're gonna bring those up when we get there, so we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, because this is one of the things I guess I wanted to get out there before we even get into the details, but I do feel like, and I wonder if you feel the same way about it, I feel like people hold Genesis to a very high
Incredibly
standard.
high standard.
Yeah, and
Yes.
this is
Yes.
something that bothers me, because it's like, on the one hand, I get it. It's like if they present it as this kind of like new way to play the game, you kind of want it to be, well, good
Uh-huh.
and convincing. At the same time, it's like, sometimes it feels like people expect this thing to be literally perfect right out of the gate, and I don't know if they're ever going to be happy with what it could ever be.
If I could try and figure out where that comes from via empathy, I think a lot of people have wanted an alternate way to play Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, to play modern Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, right? Like,
Yeah.
the alternate versions of Yu-Gi-Oh have been retro formats or games that aren't Yu-Gi-Oh, like Speed Duel,
Yeah.
So people have really wanted, like, to use like a smog on Pokemon term, like Yu-Gi-Oh, like underused or rarely used Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
But Genesis comes out, and then there is this fundamental rule change that makes it so it's still different than Yu-Gi-Oh. You can't play Link Monsters, can't play Pendulums. And it's just, people have wanted something that makes Yu-Gi-Oh whatever they want it to be, and Genesis isn't exactly that, so it gets held to a high standard. And I do like I absolutely empathize with that, because when you have a favorite pet deck, perfect example is Valmonica, a
Yeah.
place for Valmonica to see play.
Yeah.
And Genesis comes out, which could have been that, but it isn't.
Yeah.
That makes people very frustrated, and then people get. I do empathize with that. I disagree.
Yeah.
I still think people should try it, but it's definitely still held to that very high standard.
Yeah, because what I'm thinking about when you mention these points is like, I think it is this place for everyone who has a pet deck that isn't specifically Pendulum or Link related.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's something that, to me, it comes down to how do I phrase this? I feel like they promised Genesis to be something that it isn't. What they gave us is still something that's really fun, but they said it was something else, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Because in the beginning, they made it sound like it was going to play like retro Yu-Gi-Oh, right? I mean, the memed phrase of like friggin' yesterday's gameplay with today's cards is not what it is, right? Like this is, it is very much, to me, if I had to explain someone what Genesis is, this is what modern Yu-Gi-Oh would look like if they balanced it properly. Like if they never made mechanics that shouldn't have been made, maybe at the power level that they are, or stuff like that, or if the combo decks didn't make the overwhelming amount of like negates and stuff like that, or interactions. Like this, to me, a lot of the times when I play Genesis, I feel like this is what modern Yu-Gi-Oh could be. If they balanced it better. And to me, this is something that, had they advertised it as such, I think it would have been received a lot better. On the other hand, I do also understand why they don't advertise it as such, because that makes the advanced constructed format look pretty bad. Like they can't just say, oh, here's a format that's just, we solve all the problems that advanced format has, but
here's
we're not going to solve them in advanced format. You get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's what it wants to be, but they can't say that it wants to be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I 100%, and there was a time where after the NAGC, or after Minneapolis, when Joseph, Doug, and I were out at the bar, I don't know if you saw this, but we were making all the stupid memes.
Well, what do you mean? If I saw this, everyone saw it. It was everywhere.
Dude, it was the best. Oh, we were in stitches, man, just crying over our food, laughing. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
But like, I do respect them for making that phrase, because like, using that quote, because it is good advertising if it's something that you can achieve. And I don't think that they are fully moving away from trying to achieve it. They still want these modern decks to be playable. The modern decks had never really have a chance to shine in advanced, and I think that is a great goal for them to have. And I think they are still trying to emulate older gameplay styles being playable in the format. I think a big, like, just with the new points up change, the new points update, a big philosophy change that they showed in this is that they're willing to change their mind on consistency cards, right? Like all those consistency spells went down, and I think that was like a big criticism I had, is that you shouldn't hit consistency cards this much, because the stronger engines are going to be newer decks. Because a lot of new engine cards are, they supplement consistency just in a bunch of different tools. Like a lot of monsters will search different cards and stuff like that, where older decks don't have that. So if you hit consistency spells that are generic, the only decks you're hitting are older decks, right? Obviously there's probably nuance to that, and
obviously, but that's one of the things that I said every single time as well. Like, I don't understand why a card like Reinforcement of the Army is 33 freaking points, making it basically unplayable, when all that card does is add consistency to your deck. And so what they should worry about is, what is it that you can consistently do? And if there's like an older warrior archetype, an older warrior deck that doesn't do anything crazy, why shouldn't it have access to 3 copies of that 100%. Card? And so these cards, they can never be free, I don't think, because then even the modern decks can just use it for free. but they
Yep.
need to be like less. They need to be some for me. We just talked about this when we talked about the update. I think 10 is like a sweet spot maybe.
Sure.
Where it feels like a very old, let's just say a weak deck that has like no points on its engine can easily play like 3 Rhodas and still have some point for non-engine. But like a meta archetype where the engine will cost you 70, 80, or even more points, they just can't play Rhoda. And I think that is the sweet spot for these cards. And we're getting closer to that. I mean, someone like Rhoda is already down to 18. Something like Emergency Teleport, which is obviously a better card than just searching, is like 25 still. But like for some of these, they are starting to get to a point where they will be playable eventually.
Yeah, and this is where we get back to Genesys being held to the extremely high standard that it is by the community, right? Because they are ironing a lot of this stuff out. Because a lot of this, like developing a living format, is super challenging to make sure that things stay balanced in a way that you're trying to achieve your goals. And now that we're having like big events, they're able to actually implement philosophy changes in their points list. And this is something I had been saying at the start of this, is like, yeah, I know, you might have umbrage with things in the format right now, but this format's like less than a year old. Like, look, can we give it some time? Can we give them but I do still empathize with a lot of the frustrations that people had, but I think this right here is a perfect example of, now that this format is really breaking in its shoes, they're able to make these more sweeping philosophy changes that will align themselves closer to the goals that they have.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a very good point, because this specific section here is the one that helps rogue decks the most.
Yep.
This is something that if they keep doing this, I would argue they need to do a little bit more of it, but if they keep doing stuff like this is something where freaking terraforming for 10 points, that old decks with a field spell, they're gonna have a great time with that, and newer decks still won't be able to afford 10 points for a terraforming, because as much as you can say, as much as you can make fun of for the new decks being the best decks in the format, they have points. They do point them. They might not point them enough right from the get-go, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. But the new stuff does have points.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure. I mean, I still feel like it's a little bit of a, because when they said this is the very first Genesys article when they introduced it, and they were saying things like what's it, the whole thing of duelists who've always had a favorite deck and want their favorite deck to be a little more competitive. This is stuff that it does achieve, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
And I feel like people are not genuine when they say this isn't the case, because I don't know how you feel about this, but I know you are tinkering with, basically, you never play meta decks.
Never.
And it's the way I experience this format is I can actually play decks that I just enjoy. Like I've been playing and winning. Well, it wasn't big tournaments, but I've been doing well at stuff like locals I've won locals with Necros, I've won locals with Dragon Ruler, I've won locals with Paleo. And it's something that I could never do that in Advanced Constructed. It is not possible. So like there's a difference between decks to be a little bit more competitive, or decks to be like, who's expecting their deck to be the best in the format all of a sudden?
I don't know. Like I think people need to be realistic when they see that phrase, because, or like see them talking about older decks being playable, or quote unquote pet decks being playable. Because that is true, it might not be specifically your pet deck. Like Dark Scorpion Turbo is not going to be playable. I don't know. I don't think anybody plays that, but obviously there's a cutoff of certain decks being more viable. But when I go to, like, in the giant card at the WCQ, round 2 in the giant card, I played against Branded, right? I make it to game 3 against Branded in Genesys format. He sets up like Retribution, Fallen of Albaz with Rinbrumming Grave, Mirror Jade, and like Mercurium in hand. And I play through this with like the Fire King cards and play through all the interruption, and the last card in hand is Dark Flare Swordsman, like a Flame Swordsman card. And I go, Dark Flare Swordsman effect. He goes, what? And it's just like, I just reads the card, and then I like do the Flame Swordsman combo, whatever that is, and go one card into the Ultimate Flare Swordsman and swing for the 8,400, for game. And it's like, I can't do that kind of stuff in Advanced, like I'm able to leverage these like super unknown cards that happen to have synergistic engines with other decks, and it's super fun to play that way. So I don't know. It's I just
the
wish I
way
could
I
help
would
people see
describe
that.
it, the way I would describe it is I feel like the in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, and this is mostly advanced constructed, I think cards and decks have gotten so powerful that most of the time if the player going first resolves their combo, the power of the cards closes any skill gap that there might be between the two players. At least to me, it
Yeah.
feels like this. Like I this is something I notice more nowadays than I noticed it back in the day. Is I will play against someone and I will see that they are not playing optimally. Like I will spot things that they will constantly mess up, or things that they
Mhm.
like that they're just not doing like carefully enough. And I very often can't exploit it because their deck or their cards are so good that it's almost
Yes.
impossible to throw hard enough. It still happens, of course. Like I'm not saying like and this is once again, I want to emphasize that I don't hate modern Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't hate advanced constructed. I still think it's a wonderful game, but there is definitely some critique to be made about it. There will be a lot of games where your opponents will mess up and they will still end on a very strong board and they will throw their interruptions at the wrong times, but then still have like a droll behind their board or ash behind their board, and it just doesn't matter. And this is
Yeah.
something that happens. This is something that used to not happen as much. As someone who's been playing this game for a very long time, there used to be times where mistakes mattered more than they do in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, especially in advanced constructed. And this is something I experience all the time in Genesys format, and it in that sense it does remind me of gameplay back in the day, because I do feel like if my opponents make mistakes, they are easier to punish in this format.
Right. That is, obviously I'm not the best player in the world, right? I've never been like the greatest advanced player of all time. I consider myself a decent player, but I've never been topping YCSs or anything in advanced. So speaking on like the exploiting mistakes, I can't speak on that too much, but I will say like the power level of decks is so crazy and sets up boards that are they just stop gameplay regardless. Like I remember Yummy Azamina Dmod Turbo,
Yeah.
Like obviously that deck wasn't the best deck in the room really ever, but it just like you can see the opponent do the Yummy combo in such a way where it's like, okay, the line they're doing here opens the field spell up to Ghost Ogre, and that would
Yeah.
really punish them, but it just doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
even if I did have Ogre there, they just do the Dia Bellstar combo and set up Dmod into Dragoon. I was like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
there's just not
there's a lot
that
of examples
stuff
like this.
doesn't
It doesn't
exist in
even have to
Genesis.
be. It doesn't even have to be just that one deck that wasn't even the best deck in the format. And I would even argue the fact that some of these decks weren't the best decks in the format doesn't matter, because that makes it even more, like problematic in a way, because it keeps happening even in decks that aren't even considered to be good. They're just toxic, if you want to like say it like that. Like this. It's and this is one of the things that I guess in modern Yu-Gi-Oh. It feels like the engine that people play doesn't, a lot of the time it doesn't matter, because everything is like competent enough to the point where it can win.
Yeah.
And then what ends up deciding the games is who goes first or which non-engine do you draw. In a lot of cases, not every single time, of course. There's nuance to this, but in a lot of cases in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, the thing that makes it feel like modern Yu-Gi-Oh is the non-engine. What like, okay, I'm playing against a Yami board and they have a droll behind it, or I'm playing against a Mitsurugi board and they have droll behind it, or whatever, and it just doesn't really meaningfully. The reason you're losing is because there's some board plus droll, or some board plus ash, or some board plus impulse. Worst case, multiple of those. So it's something that, even if in Genesys format there are best decks, and there is a metagame, which honestly it's unreasonable to expect that there wouldn't be a metagame. Like the what's it called? The way it feels to play against those decks is still different, because the way they interact is different and the non-engine that they have is different.
Yeah, I guess that's actually something I wanted to make a separate point of this, but since you brought it up now, I think it's a really good. This is one of my biggest like advertisements of Genesis. Like I'm not sponsored by Konami to talk well about Genesis. I just like the format, The biggest thing I say whenever people ask me why do you enjoy the format so much is that there is so much less they do full combo plus have non-engine in hand, right?
Yeah.
Like, sure, decks like Fairy Tale might do their combo and have a super poly set or something, which is still strong, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it is so much less. They had one starter, one extender, and then they also drew 3 uniquely activatable hand traps that you have to play through too. Like, that just doesn't happen in this format. I think the last time I played into a board where it was like a board that had a hand trap was when I was playing against Radiant Typhoon. They set up their board, and then the one hand trap they had was like a Skullmeister, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not like you have to play through Astral Nib plus full combo. That's just not in the format, and that feels so great to not have to deal with that.
Because a lot of the times I noticed that what you see when your opponent has made a board is what you get. Like, this is what you have to beat, right? You can figure out, okay, these are my interactions, find a way through it. And in advanced format, it's always like, I very, very frequently, I look at boards and I'm like, yeah, I can beat this, but my opponent's deck has 20 non-engine on average. They're going to have 2 in hand at least. And whether it's Stroll or whether it's Ash or whether it's Imperm plus Veiler or whatever, the boards, it's never what you see is what you have to beat. It's what you see, and if you get unlucky, it's 3 hand traps. If you get lucky, it's only 1. And yeah, so this is something I did just so we could actually back this up with some data. I looked at the top cuts for the NAWCQ and the EUWCQ for both Genesys and Advanced Constructed. And we're going to talk about deck diversity in a second. But what I did, even to look past deck diversity itself, is I looked at some of the more popular non-engine cards that people were playing, and to kind of just, because non-engine in Advanced Constructed makes up about 50% of decks. So like half of a deck is non-engine. So the non-engine you play against heavily dictates how it feels to play the game. And in advanced format, I looked at all the deck lists from the top 8 from both of these tournaments, and I wrote down some of the numbers on what we have. So there was, in advanced format, there was legitimately one deck that didn't play Droll and Lockbird. I said it was all of them earlier, but it was only 15 now that I'm looking at the numbers. So Droll and Lockbird was the most popular card next to Multrami Fuwalos in advanced constructed format. They both had a play rate of 15 out of 16 decks in between the top 16, the two top 8s, which I'm just going to refer to it as top 16 from both tournaments. So we have 15 out of 16 Drolls, we have 15 out of 16 Fuwas, we have 15 out of 16 Called Bys, we have 14 out of 16 Ash Blossoms, the only exception being Branded. The 2 Branded players did not play Ash Blossom in Europe. And we have 12 out of 16 Perulias. And compare that to Genesys. We had 0 Drolls in 16 decks, we had 0 Ash in 16 decks, we had 0 Called By in 16 decks. We had Fuwalos in 5 out of 16 decks. We had Perulia in 5 out of 16 decks.
Yep, that sounds about right.
There's no none of these cards that are completely dominating advanced constructed format in way over 80-90% of decks. None of those cards is more represented in Genesys format than 5 out of 16, and most of them are just not played at all. So you are legitimately not playing against any of those cards ever. And I can't say how much of a difference that makes when I go to Genesys locals and I go second and I draw a freaking Trap Tantalizing Tune in my Paleozoic deck from 9 years ago. And I know it's not getting ashed. And it's just such a big difference. That I find it hard to even justify or understand why people are saying it feels the same to play both formats, personally. And I even looked at some other numbers as well. I have another thing that's more so a thing that bothers me personally is the amount of counter traps that people are citing in for going first, whether it's Solemns or searchable counter traps like Vanadium Reframing, which in the TCG out of those 16 decks, 12 did. 12 decks had searchable Vanadium Reframing or Solemns that they would side in, whether it's Accusation or Warning or Judgment. And in Genesys, it was 2 decks that were doing that. And it was 2 decks that were specifically also searching Vanadium Reframing. Just the two synchro, like it was some Crystron deck and some other. I don't remember. This Crystron deck cited reframing for going first, and it was one other deck that also cited reframing. I forgot what it was. Nothing in these, which was a synchro deck here.
That's another huge thing is when we talk about the non-engine that is played in both formats, I think like people can be critical of the decks, certain decks being like what am I trying to say? Like if some decks are playable in Advanced, they're also playable in Genesis, that people can say that that's a criticism. And I guess in some ways it could be.
Yeah.
But the thing that really sticks out to me in terms of gameplay differences is that your cards resolve more. Like the composition of non-engine is not Ash, Dominus cards, Solemns and counter traps. It's like Final Bringer of the End Times, Super Poly, Fua. And if you do get hit with a Fua, what are they drawing into, right? Are they drawing into Valor, Dominus, Ash? Like, no, they're drawing into engine pieces that they're going to try to use next turn. It's like, oh man, it's so frustrating to just sit down for an advanced constructed tournament after coming back from a big Genesis tournament, and then I activate 3 cards. They all get hit with a negation hand trap in some way, and then it's like it's cool. I guess the hand traps are stopping me going first, I guess, but like, am I having fun? Like, is either playing having fun? It's just, it's just like not. It's just so. Bleh. I don't know.
It wasn't actually. It wasn't 2 reframings. I just counted the Unbreakable XYZ barrier in the Teller Knight deck because that's basically a solemn when you go first.
Yeah.
So I counted that. There's one thing I found when I was comparing what kind of cards they play in both formats. I also counted the number of floodgates. And this is where the two are the closest to each other.
Yes.
So in Advanced Constructed, I counted 8 out of 16 decks who were maining or siding a floodgate. And I excluded Roland Lockbird from that or whatever. Like I didn't count like that because I was already doing that in the other. But I counted stuff like Anti-Spell Fragrance or branded decks tutoring out Christia and stuff like that. I counted that sort of stuff. So 8 out of 16 decks in Advanced Constructed were doing floodgates. In Genesis, that was still 6 out of 16. We still have a lot of side deck floodgates. They are more niche than something like Anti-Spell or Christia, because those are hit in Genesis format quite significantly. But if you look at the winning deck list from North America, for example, it was still siding 9 floodgates for different matchups, which is something that is a little bit less of a problem in Genesis, but it still exists. Right, like this is. I don't want to say like, and this is what I mean. Like, I'm not saying Genesis doesn't have any problems, but it's still something that in comparison to the Advanced Constructed format, this still looks better because they are way more specific floodgates. They're not going to ruin every single matchup like an Anti-Spell would, but the job's not done essentially for Genesis format.
This is. There are 2 points of major criticism I still have with Genesis format, and this is one of them. For whatever reason, there is a reluctance to call out these kinds of cards. And like Konami still, from what I understand, have not used the term floodgate in any capacity. Now, I understand floodgate is a term that is a community colloquialism. I'm not saying that they're wrong for not using it or whatever, but they're not like categorizing these kinds of cards and addressing them, right? There is a laundry list of these cards that still exist that their whole design is to stop a specific game mechanic. And this would behoove them a lot to say the point of Genesis format is to make your favorite deck playable. These cards make it so if they do see play, your favorite deck might not be playable, so we are putting them at 100 points. And that includes Non-Fusion Area, Stygian Dirge, Eye of Truth, Soundproof Discord, Mask of Restrict, Magic Deflector. Like, I think there's like 8 or 9 of them that if they
I saw people play. I think Different Dimension Ground probably even has some points, but the Labyrinth players still played them in the side deck. I think it has points.
Even I played Different Dimension Ground as a main deck thrust target in the Mimigul deck that I got 10th place with at Columbus. But even Different Dimension Ground having 10 points is still better than soundproofed having 0.
Yeah.
You know, I think that just it's not. It would be a solely positive thing
Yeah.
for these cards to leave the format, right?
Yeah.
And what bothers me is that they are seeing notable play as well. The reluctance to address. Oh, Gravity Collapse is another one of them. Thank you, Chatter.
Yeah.
The thing that is bothering me is that there is a clear philosophy for cards like this to get hit, right? You know, we have cards, I reference it all the time, and the band Played On is a perfect example of a card that is very deliberately, it would be sided in to stop exceed strategies, you know? So we know that they see cards like this. We know that they don't like the impact that they have on the game, but some of them are still okay, you know? And I got hit with soundproofed at the Minneapolis. Lucky enough, I was still able to win that game. Obviously, that's you know, the quality of these cards is much lower than other floodgates on there. But regardless, any game that is won via the effect of these cards is a game where somebody's favorite deck was less playable, which is just totally antithetical to what the format is trying to be. So they need to just 100-point him. That nobody would care. It would just solely be a positive thing.
Yeah. I mean, I find it interesting because like this deck even won the event, right? Like this guy, which is once again nothing against the player. Like players will just optimize their deck list in order to win the event. That's completely fine. But Hanko won this tournament with 9 floodgates in the side deck. 9 out of 15 cards in the side deck were floodgates. And I can't fathom looking at this result and being like, yeah, we're gonna put Thunderclap Monk to 9 points because the winner played 3 copies of it, and then just completely ignore what's going on in the side deck over there.
Yeah, the ignoring of these cards is what I dislike.
Yeah, it's the same thing with how long did we have to fight and scream over Dimensional Fissure? Yeah,
I know. That is, I'm an advocate of points by play rate at this point. This is, I know people. There are absolutely criticisms of points by play rate. Like, I think Dimensional Shifter is a good example of why points by play rate is a flawed system. Because if you view Dimension Shifter solely by its play rate, then you'll never point it adequately because it will never be a card that sees a sufficient percentage of play because that's in its design, right? But you know, the philosophy has to align in order for points by play rate to be a positive factor, you know? So if a card like Non-Fusion Area has a low play rate, it might be because players assess that there aren't enough fusion decks in the format. Right. Does that mean that Non-Fusion Area resolving is still positive for the format? Absolutely not. You know?
But that doesn't that speak against points by play rate?
So where I like points by play rate is cards like DD Crow.
Right.
So cards that we consider to be fair, because they are fair cards. Yeah. Does that mean that they should never have balance applied to them? You know, a card like DD Crow being at 0 points made it so every deck that was weak to DD Crow was less viable in the format. I think Pump King is a perfect example. Even though Pump King still is not seeing a lot of success, Pump King was hit a lot by DD Crow. So if the metagame never changes, DD Crow will always be played. Therefore, decks that are weak to it will have that that detriment applied to them. So that's why I like the philosophy of points by play rate, because it shifts the non-engine and composition of the metagame in small incremental ways that can apply incremental percentages to the viability of other decks.
I mean, you are always trying to balance 2 philosophies at the same time, no matter what you do, right? The one thing is you want to quote unquote punish decks for being successful or too strong, which is the point by play rate, point by success rate kind of thing. But then you're also always have to juggle this philosophy of what do you want the gameplay in this format to be like. And this is something that I'm personally a little bit disappointed by, because in the beginning I was like, okay, they obviously understand what's going on with floodgates in advanced constructed format, and for whatever reason they can't put them all on the ban list, wherever they can't. So they're giving them all 100 points in Genesys format. And they came out swinging with like all of these floodgates on the list, all 100 points. And to me, the natural like continuation of that would have been to, if there's still floodgates left that now see play, we will follow up on those. And that's just something that hasn't really happened from what I'm seeing.
Yep. Yeah.
Because like,
And that's where
took forever for Dimensional Fissure, took forever to get rid of Rongo, and like a lot of these cards that are being played right now are also all being ignored.
Yeah. And like I said, as somebody that avidly loves this format and avidly plays the format, that is continuing my this is probably my biggest criticism of the format.
Mm-hmm.
This is my biggest criticism of the format, is the inability to, or not inability, the I don't know, the stubbornness, or maybe they're not able to, I don't know, just not getting rid of these cards.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I can't imagine that it's not being able to, because they were able to do it with all the other ones.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the fact that they don't talk about them is the thing that also really bothers me. If there is a genuine reasoning for these cards to be in the format, I would probably disagree with it, but I would at least appreciate a communicated reason, you know? But they just don't talk about them. Like, that is something I am very frustrated by.
Yeah. How do you personally view, let's move from non-engine and floodgates. Let's move to the actual decks that people are playing and the actual decks that people are have success with. How do you feel about the argument of the fact that 7 out of 8 top 8 decks at the NAWCQ were Blitzclick is a very bad look on the format, and it makes people, like, of course they see in the advanced constructed main event it was 7 out of 8 cool tune. What's like, is it understandable to you that people seeing, well, the same level of dominance on a surface level in Genesys format, is this something that should scare people off? Or like, how do you feel about them dealing with new decks or best decks in the format?
That's like, to address the surface level point, like, yeah, it is surface level, because I think Blitzclick being 7 out of the 8 decks, Blitzclick is an awesome best deck to have in the format. The positive effect that Blitzclick has on shaping the metagame in Genesys was amazing, dude. Like, nobody was playing Shifter. The people's, like, I mean, I still like them all Charmies as cards, but like, Charmies weren't as represented in people's main decks because, like, Fua is genuinely a dead card versus Blitz. It totally diversified the non-engine. It made Chalice a banger of a card because you can Chalice the Whisker when it comes out in the middle of your turn. Like, there's just so many cool things that playing against Blitzclick allows you to do. I had a fun match that I lost against Blitzclick. And I think that's an important thing to realize too, is that you can have fun games where you lose. Like, I set up full Angeliki Crystron board with like 7 interactions, had the knight down. My Blitzclick opponent got down to 1,000 life points, and then they were able to just eke out the win still through all the interruptions I had, because they like lava golem 2 of my interruptions. On a later turn, they were able to Whisker for a hugely positive amount, and they still won the game. And that's fun. We had a fun game even though I wasn't able to win. And the play style that Blitzclick has is super grindy, allows for important decision making that can influence the match result. I just think that it has, I don't know, the consequence of Blitzclick being the best deck is really positive. Is it too unbalanced to the rest of the field? Yeah, for sure. And I hope that the points that it just got addresses that. I think they will. But the experience of having Blitzclick as the most powerful deck was an awesome one. I really enjoyed it. And also, it's like the engines that are in this format as the best decks, that's what you're playing against most of the time, right? Is the engine. Even though lower pointed decks have more non-engine, it's not Ash, Droll, Bell, Dominus cards. Like, it's not all of these negation cards that are just unfun to play against. So I don't know. I speak very highly of Blitzclick because I really enjoy playing against it.
And I think that's fair. It still is something that is going to, of course, change. Like this could have been, what if Blitzkrieg was just coincidentally a deck that you didn't enjoy playing against, right? Like it
True.
would have been, it could have been a problem regardless. So
Mhm.
I personally think that there is a middle ground. I agree with what you're saying. Playing against the best decks in Genesis format does not feel the same as playing against the best decks in Advanced Constructed for various reasons, but still, there are top tier decks in Advanced Constructed that I think are fun to play against, something like Branded. And there are decks that are fun to play against in Genesis format. It could be the other way around. And so one of the things that I feel like is important for this format is I think they need to find a middle ground where I understand that they want to use Genesis as like an outlet for their decks that don't quite make it into Advanced Constructed, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not delusional. As much as I do like Genesis format, I don't think their incentive is to just have us play all the retro decks. Like, they do want us to be able to play those new decks. And I think that's where I think there is a valid criticism to be made that they're not like openly saying that they like it advertised it as like yesterday's gameplay. Well, they did say yesterday's gameplay with today's cards, to be fair, I guess. But something like it feels a little bit forced if these decks are not good in Advanced Constructed or not good enough, and then like here's a secondary format where you can play all the other stuff that you otherwise wouldn't buy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is, on the surface level, it is a bad look. I mean, I will defend it. If we go past the surface level, that's where I will defend Blitzkrieg being as represented and successful as it was. But there is a point to be made. I hope what this event did is it showed them that they can be a little harsher on points with new decks, and those new decks will still be playable.
That's what I was trying to get to, because I had the same feeling when I was prepping for Euros. When I looked at some of the decks and their points, I didn't spend that much time for Genesis prep because I was more focused on the one where you can actually qualify for Worlds. But I did feel like, you know, there's no way that Blitzkrieg is a deck that deserves to have like, what was it, 40 points on its entire engine. And I was like, okay, this deck is still good if it has 60 or 80 or whatever points on the thing. We don't have to talk about the exact amount it needs, but like just in general, like that deck was definitely going to be good enough even with higher points. And I personally think if they want to get rid of this stigma, like if they want to get rid of this thing that gives this format a bad look, is I think they should start with higher points and then move their way down.
I totally agree, and if you don't mind, I'll use this as a jumping off point to talk about my second criticism of the format. Is point distribution on eras of decks, right? And what I mean by that is like new decks right now, with the way that they are being released, are underpointed to the point where they are going to be the most successful. Like, just by numbers, they are going to be the most successful things in the format. I still am a staunch advocate that older decks are still viable. I think decks with high pointed engine are extremely playable in the format. A big mission I have is to show people that if your deck has a highly pointed engine, that doesn't mean it's not viable, right? I mean, a perfect example is I got top 32 in Richmond, investing 100 points in 2 cards in the Testina deck, the Tearlament deck. And then I got the top 64 in the NAGC with the Crystron deck that had like 20 points on Inclusion, 20 points on Dawn Dragster, and 33 points on a copy of Witness. You know, like your high engine pointed decks are still viable. But all that to say, I do still think that they need to adjust their point philosophies on older decks. Not like retro decks, but decks that came out in like 2021 to 2024 or 2023, you know, talking your Flu, your what's another good example? I mean, you know, Swap Frog and Ronin Totem are not
dude, Swap Frog has 33 points, man.
Yeah, like that really, to make it more clear what my actual criticism is, some of these cards that are so highly pointed, it's very clear that they do not deserve it. You know, like Swap Frog being 33 and Ronin Totem being as high as it is, that we need to allow these older decks to prove if they are a problem or not. You know, I think Flu is a perfect example because Flu is 33 points on Rabina and 33 points on Advent of Adventure. Why? In what world?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been talking about this recently about Flu in general. I think Flu was always overhated because of all the floodgates it was played with.
Yes.
Like, I think if they never made Featherstorm or the barrier statue a thing, I think people would actually don't hate Flu as much.
Yeah.
I think
Like
a lot
chat,
of it
the
is
person in chat saying, nah, keep Flu banned, not Flu. Why? But that's like, I want to
people just hate it. Let me tell you, as someone who's been trying to defend Runix for a long time, people just hate decks that have traumatized them with floodgates.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like Flu does nothing different than what any interactive deck would do. You know, it's like, it summons, activates a trap that normal summons guys during your turn and summons Ryza.
Yeah.
And what is M-Pen? M-Pen floodgates attack position monsters. There's no links in this
at its
format.
least relevant in Genesys format.
It's exactly,
Yeah.
I think allowing, and even if you don't want
Guys, right now, you guys are saying M-Pen is a floodgate. If you are seriously trying to tell me that you hate Flu because of M-Pen, I think you're not being honest. I think if you seriously believe that you hated Flu because of M-Pen, you guys are just not being honest to yourself.
Yeah, there's no way.
Crazy.
That's
the
crazy.
reason why everyone hated Flu were Shifter, Barrier Statue, Featherstorm, maybe Apex Avion because Omni Negate.
Yeah.
And Shifter is a card that should be higher in Genesys as well, absolutely, but that's not a Flu problem. And dude, you guys have got me defending Flu right now. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think genuinely the hatred against this deck is just, and okay, I will even be more clear.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like the deck, saying Flu deserves 66 points for one copy of Rabina and one copy of Advent.
Yeah, it's insane.
Advent being higher than the entire Blitz engine is just insane. Crazy. Like, that's insane. Crazy. Yeah. There's no justifiable reason in which that's
and that's where I think that's where it comes from. I think that's where the impression comes from, that they only want to sell you new decks that aren't quite good enough for advanced format, right? When if you actually play the format, it's not actually just that, but that's extremely what it looks like.
Yeah. Even if, regardless of an individual hatred of Flu, Zoo is another example. Zodiac is pointed insanely high. Like, Zodiac cards are crazy high.
Yeah.
I would prefer that we look at these modern, like older modern decks, right? The 2021s to the 2020 to, I don't know, even later than that, whatever. Older modern decks is what I'm getting at, that have these high points on them, and just lower point them, allow people to play with them, and if they become a problem, then you can repoint them. But that is a huge criticism. Like, let me relate it back to the points list, right? Phantom Knight. If we look at Phantom Knight, they had some initial points on those cards. It was proven to not be that big of a deal. Phantom Knight has not performed since its release out of the newest set.
Yeah.
So they were lowering the points on Phantom Knight cards. Yeah. Why does a new deck that does still have a strong engine, it just isn't performing well, why does the new deck get grace of point reductions where decks that have, in their whole time in Genesys format, since release, done absolutely nothing competitively, still have super high points? It just goes against their philosophy. I don't know, what the term I've used for it is set it and forget it cards.
Yeah.
That I feel that some of the decks and some of these cards have, where they set the points and they said, that's it, and they just forget it.
And the reason it's frustrating to me is because it isn't even necessary. Like, if they actually, I don't know if it's a matter of they don't understand it or they just want to make sure, but I'm gonna be honest with you, none of these decks would be better than Blitzclick even if they were almost 0 points.
Yep. Totally agree.
So it's just something, it makes the format look worse for people. It makes the format look less attractive for people, even if, like, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't do anything. Like, Flu would be playable with almost no points on the card. But it wouldn't be better than Blitzclick. Like, who are we kidding right now?
Yeah.
And that's
the balance aspect of it, right? The whole idea is to make it so your favorite deck exists in an environment that is balanced across the other decks of the format. And
Yeah.
when newer decks get released, sure, they might misevaluate how good they are and not apply a lot of points to them. I give a lot of grace for this set. Like Sacred Beast, I had no idea Sacred Beast was going to be as good as it was. No clue. I did not think it was going to be that good.
Hmm.
Didn't perform in the OCG advanced format. And obviously that's a different environment because it's advanced, but regardless, like
Yep.
I just did not expect Sacred Beast to be as good and as playable as it was.
Yep.
But like it happens. The design team and R&D, they're going to misevaluate how good decks or how bad decks are going to be in this format. I get it. I
Yep.
will happily apply grace to them for that.
Yeah.
But just applying, like offering these high what I don't know, point, like the points values with such fear of these older decks that are clearly not gonna perform at a rate that's unhealthy or high percentage wise in the format, like Swap Frog, or Flu or Zoo or something like that. Like I think just give them a chance to prove themselves as broken and then reapply points to them.
And I feel like a lot of these things, what we're doing right now is we are criticizing Genesys format. And guys, let me tell you something. You can criticize something and still find it good overall, right? I think that's what it's all about. I mean, I do this all the time with Advanced Constructed too. Like I have criticisms of Advanced Constructed. But what I feel like is happening specifically with Genesys format more so than Advanced Constructed is people will take these things and use them as a reason to essentially, what's the word? Completely dismiss the format as a whole. I feel like is what's happening a lot of the times.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Is they're like, oh, Genesys also has some floodgates, or Genesys also has a best deck that's from the newest pack. As a result, I will not play it. Instead, I will play the Advanced Constructed format, which is the exact same thing at the very minimum, right? Which is weird to me. I don't know. It's weird. It does make some sense as well. Like, I mean, if you see that something, if it feels on a surface level, if it doesn't feel meaningfully different, then why would you spend your time and energy on it? And so I feel like that's what they need to work on a little bit. Is because here's the thing: the NAWCQ is always used as a very negative example right now. The EUWCQ, for example, doesn't look quite as bad. This is also true for the Advanced Constructed main event, to be fair. There's also only 3 cool tunes here. But here we only had 3 Blitzkrieg in top 8. And the interesting thing is if you scroll past top 8, you actually start seeing a lot of different kind of stuff. You know, we see Fairy Tales, we see Predaplants, we see Red Dragon Archfiend, we see Clown Crew, we see Magnet Warriors, we see some Invoked.
Yeah. That's one thing I find is super weird is now all of a sudden, because top 8 is like top cut, people have totally changed their definition of what a tier 0 format is. Like we didn't call formats tier 0 formats when there were 7 in top 8 out of the top 32 before. Now, because top cut is only 8, it's like now this is qualifying as a tier 0 format. Like, why did it change this? Why did we, like, I don't know, our object permanence just totally disappeared?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? This is something, in all fairness, this also happens when you scroll down in Advanced Constructed. You also have more decks entering the ring, but less. Yes. I looked at this morning as well. There is a higher deck diversity within the top 32 for all the Genesys events. The website here only goes to top 32 on both of these. But the NAWCQ for Genesys has the same amount of different decks in top 32 as the main event has in top 64.
Yeah.
So there is more, and the data is even incomplete for a lot of it. For NA, it's complete because they posted the list, but for EU, there's a lot of decks missing.
Yeah.
So there is more diversity in the realm of top 32 in Genesys format than there is in Advanced Constructed format.
Yeah, and there are decks that are like highly pointed decks that are represent. Like there was a voiceless voice. I can't remember if it was voiceless voice for Genesis, but there was like a voiceless voice deck.
Yeah, I saw it just now. There's a voiceless voice in top 16.
Yeah, I would appreciate a little bit more.
Voiceless voice, Sacred Beast, Hecka Hands, Super Quantum Heroes, another Sacred Beast, Draco Tail, Archmage, Mimighoul, Constellar, branded in Genesys format. There's a lot of different stuff going on.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of different play styles. There's heavy engine pointed, like engine focused decks. There's decks that have a sufficient amount of non-engine. You know, it's just the play styles are so different. And this is where I'm gonna, you know, do my Genesis advocacy here, because I am very critical of those 2 points I discussed before. But
Hmm.
even with those 2 macro level points that I speak very harshly about, I've never had this much fun playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever
Hmm.
in my life. Like, I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! For, you know, more than a decade. I have never had this as much fun as I've had in Genesis now. Just it is it is a blast, dude.
Hmm.
Your cards resolve, the decks that you can play are super diverse. Like, I have good results with super old decks, right? I mean, I shouldn't even have to point to Testina. Like, obviously that deck has done nothing in advanced, and getting a top 32 with that is crazy. And with tier limit cards, 100 points on its engine, like, that's nuts. The Mimighoul, that's a deck from years ago. Crystron and BES, like, I guess BES you could argue is a modern deck because of
I
the new
think that, come
cards.
on, man.
Like, I know. But like, still, the stuff you can do in this format is so much more fun. I shouldn't say more fun. It is fun because you can be really creative in deck building, and because your cards resolve more. It's just like, I don't know. It's a blast to play, man. I just love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I wouldn't say it's the most fun I've ever had with Yu-Gi-Oh, but it does really, to me, it feels like a lot of the things that I constantly criticize about advanced constructed format, which I criticize because I love the game, are things that are already happening in Genesis format, and whenever I play Genesis format, I notice the difference. So for me, it's hard to understand why people say there isn't a meaningful difference. And I feel like a lot of it is just surface level analysis without actually playing the format, which is understandable, but also frustrating. You know what I mean? It's like, I understand that if something doesn't look appealing on the surface, you have a hard time actually giving it a chance.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's frustrating because people really should. And it's something that if Genesis had the same level of competitive environment, because I'm a very competitive player, so I care about that. Like, if there's worlds points to be gained at a YCS, or if there's a world championship in general to be had, then I am going to care more about advanced constructed format, because that is something that is important to me. But raw gameplay wise, at the moment, I think Genesis is very, very promising to me, and something I definitely want to be in the game, and something that I would, if I was choosing just by raw gameplay experience, I think I would choose Genesis format at the moment.
Yep. Totally agree.
And that is something that makes me it's interesting, because it has me conflicted a little bit, right? Because on the one hand, I want to compete at the highest level possible, and there is higher levels for advanced constructed than there are for Genesis. The tournaments are bigger, there are worlds points, there's a world championship and all that kind of stuff. But if I'm talking just raw enjoyment, I'm always looking forward to like the once a month Genesis locals that I can go to, because I know I can play something that I will really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's not like that doesn't happen in TCG either, in advanced constructed, to be fair. Like, there are decks that I really enjoy. The difference is the decks that I'm playing against are usually not decks that I enjoy playing against. You know, if I go to advanced constructed locals, I will play against Elf Notes, I will play against Archmage, I will play against all that kind of stuff that, if I'm honest, I don't really enjoy going up against them. You know, if advanced format was like branded and Sky Striker and branded Chaos Ritual Light and Darkness stuff all the time, then I wouldn't be making these arguments right now, because then the format I would also have a blast in. But there are just outliers that are more common in advanced format that I can play a deck I love as much as I want, but if my opponent's deck FTKs me, then, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think I was super wrong about where the direction of this format was going. Because if you would have talked to me about what I think the format was going to be like before Minneapolis in the WCQ Genesis events, I was dooming. I was super dooming that, like, you know, Constellar, Mjolnir Lock, and Cosmo Neos were like the only things that were worth playing.
Yeah.
but I just, the composition of the format and how it is, and because engines are weaker by nature, like it actually is harder to make decks like that more consistently viable,
Yeah.
And that's just, I don't know. I've just had a great experience. I keep seeing all the time a lot of complaints about like how certain decks are dead, and then here we're looking at Labyrinth that made it to top 8, right? Like, oh man, people will constantly tell you that Labyrinth is unplayable in this format, and then Labyrinth makes top 8.
Yeah.
Like you gotta try. Like, you can't. Eventually, you have to stop complaining and try. Like that's like where I feel with a lot of the community. I do. You even heard me on this stream, chat. I have very harsh complaints about the format, but some of these complaints I see is just like, you're not even gonna try. You're gonna try to make Mermail playable. Mermail made it to day 2 of YCS Columbus. It didn't get reported on because it didn't make top 32, but like it made it. You gotta try. Try to have fun. Try to make something work. I'm trying to prove it to people all the time. It can happen. You can have a blast in this format. Just try.
Yeah, to be fair though, you put Angelica cards into a paleo deck, so I don't know how reliable of a source you are.
Hey, that deck cooks. I'm sorry. You can Morella Disturbance and search the field spell and listed's a 2. Like, come on, that's crazy.
Okay.
All right, you're not a believer. It's fine.
No, I think it's just hard because on the one hand, I feel like they've made a lot of mistakes with it, because this is the way the game is right now, the way that Genesys format is right now. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think it has constantly improved over its lifespan. I don't even know when they published it, like a year ago at this point, probably around a little bit less.
So I believe the official start date of Genesys was September of last year.
Okay, so a little bit less than a year. And I think especially early on, a lot of the mistakes that they made, they still hurt them to this day. And it's the small things that end up having a big impact on it. Like, for example, the first time I played Genesys was at YCS Bologna on the Friday, where they offered it as a public event, and I got wrongoed by well, I don't know what the deck was at the time. It wasn't Teller Knights yet. It was Onomat, yes. And it's just like an oversight like this. And I said this at the time, like, all of a sudden you have a format where there's still a bunch of FTK decks, but your non-engine is heavily pointed. So how are you gonna,
Yep.
And this is something you need to be careful with, stuff like that. And that's why I'm always saying, like, just be more aggressive with the points. Just be more aggressive. No one is going to complain if you put a bunch of floodgates to 100. No one was going to complain about Genesys format if Rongo started out as a 100-point card. And you do need to make a distinct difference between advanced format and Genesys format, and that distinct difference is not yesterday's gameplay. That the difference, it's supposed to be today's gameplay, but what it should be.
Yeah.
That
is sorry to interrupt, but that is something that I think a lot of the complaints of Genesys format are still like existing from, is that people tried it when it came out.
Yes.
And look, I will be totally honest. Genesys format sucked on release. Like, sorry, Konami. I know I'm your biggest fan with Genesys format here, but when it first came out, it was buns, bro. It was terrible. Like, Runic Radiant Typhoon was the least fun deck to play against ever. When they dropped Droll to 5, I genuinely wanted to... I thought it was dead. Like, literally, when I played in the format, when Droll and Lockbird was at 5 points, I was like, this is going to die within the year. Like, the format was absolutely awful to play. But they saw the feedback and they fixed it, and I've had an amazing time.
Somewhat, right? They fixed it somewhat. Because, like, Di-Fi, how long did Di-Fi take?
Yeah, that was... Oh my god.
What was it? It was like Droll and Lockbird was freaking... It was like -5 points. You gained 15 points if you put Droll into your deck or some shit. Like, it was... Come on, man. Like, if you're trying to give us an alternative, make it feel different, man.
Yeah, it truly...
Like, I got drolled every game, bro. I got wrongoed. People made Nat Beast. People played Di-Fi. Like, come on, man. And that's the thing, right? That's the impression that people had in the beginning, and I get it.
That
Like
was
if that was your first like experience with the format, like yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
what? You didn't like Generator VFD Turbo? Aw, Josh.
yeah. So I don't know. It's hard because they have come a long way from that.
Yeah.
Like here's the thing, right? Let's look at it from this perspective, right? They had those problems in Genesis, and they have not completely gotten rid of them, but they've done a lot about those in less than a year, right? The amount
Yeah.
of movement that Genesis format has, developments that are being made in that direction, is crazy compared to advanced constructed format, where every 4 months they'll give us a ban list and they'll be like, yeah, sorry, we're not banning Ripper, we're banning Noroi actually.
Yep.
And we're putting Cupsy Yamiway to 1.
Yeah.
And it's like there is more stuff happening in Genesis, and I just like every time I return to it, because it's not my main game, I feel the improvements.
Yep.
It's not like because I tried playing Paleo a year ago in this format already. Like it was one of the first things I did, or play Dragon Ruler. And when I come back to it now, it doesn't feel like my deck has gotten worse compared to what's going on. And maybe that's also something worth noting. It's like it doesn't feel like my deck is aging poorly. It doesn't feel
Totally
like my Dragon Ruler deck that I enjoyed half a year ago. It feels like I could still play that now, and it'd be fine. They even reduced the points on Dragon Rulers, to be fair. It could probably even make it better.
Yeah, I want to harken back to this points list again, and what I said before about the evidence of changes in philosophy. I think it is super promising to see like Rongo go to 100 and Winda go to 100 and lowering the points on the other Shadal like engine cards. I think it's really cool to see how they are working on like changing point distribution across engines, like with Fairy Tail. They're lowering the points on Snow because it's not necessarily an engine piece, it's more of an interruption, but they're distributing points across the rest of the Fairy Tail cards to make it so the engine takes up more points and space and lowers the points on like available non-engine. Fire King is another example. Like they're giving the Xyz a couple points and then
Dude,
lowering the points on
Fire King has got to be crazy. Like
it is. I'm telling you, the deck that I have been playing, I made it to top 16 of the Giant card. I'm super mad about how I lost the top 16, but whatever. I play the Flame Swords and Fire King deck I play is broken. Like the fact that you can pop Mirage Swordsman and bridge into the other engine, like the Fire King cards are broken, and you don't have to play.
When I said Fire King, I didn't mean Fire King, but okay, go on.
Yeah, I know you don't have to play my Chungus anime build, but like the deck is so fun. It's very good. Fire King struggled a lot because of Di-Fi. And their Fire King is going to see a lot of play moving forward. I think Fire King is it's just a great engine. It's a great engine. You can bridge it with other fire decks. I'm telling y'all, you got to try them. Whatever. I'm not going to advocate for my stupid deck again, but still, like it's I don't know. I'm just a big fan of this point list because of the changes in philosophy that I see on it. And oh my God, Tachyon, please. Thank God hitting Tachyon. That card is so... I was super frustrated to see that card at 0 for the longest time. I'm so happy.
I think it's particularly because like the thing is, with Tachyon, the logic applies that we said for the other searchers. I don't think 7th Tachyon is like an outrageous card that should have a lot of points. But especially if you put all the other like Rhodas at like 30 plus points, having that card at 0 feels like one of the most forced things. Of like, you're not actually doing this because you care about the balance of the format. You care about people picking up this card or playing specific decks, right? Like you're not making this feels like a very marketing driven decision when obviously every other searcher in the game has these points, and then the newest one that supports some current decks just isn't hit, right?
I definitely can see that. I feel that 7th Tachyon was actually a misinterpretation of its philosophy, right? Because the stated philosophy of 7th Tachyon was that it has a cost, it locks you, it takes extra deck space up, right? The thing is, like, that evaluation is incorrect because it doesn't actually have a cost. It has, during its resolution, you put a card back, and that is not an insignificant difference, right?
Yeah.
If I'm sitting across from 7th Tachyon and they activate it on me, am I really going to negate 7th Tachyon because they didn't pay a cost to activate it? you know.
Well, you're
So
not going to negate it
because
because
of,
you're playing Genesis.
well, fair point. Hey, I might have a Therian King Regulus that I search in my first
Okay.
turn now.
Yeah, fair enough.
But like if I negate 7 Tachyon, that has much less return on investment than if they activated, like, I don't know, Signet Mining. Any card that you're not going to play that card, but any card
Right.
that has like a discard cost.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Fire Formation Tenki and 7th Tachyon are the same points, I still think is a misevaluation in philosophy, because Fire Formation Tenki is so much worse than 7th Tachyon because it's a continuous spell, right? 7th Tachyon is not a continuous spell. The only card, like, negation is the only way that thing's not going to resolve.
Yeah.
Fire Formation Tenki is going to lose to the MST that Radiant Typhoon searched, you know? So these are the kind of things that I think they need to apply a little bit more nuance to those points. But again, we see that happening.
Honestly, I disagree. I think
Really?
I think there's no nuance needed. I think all of these cards can be boiled down to this is a consistency piece with individual pros and cons. And you could
Okay,
slap
fair.
a price tag that is almost the same on all of these. I think something like 10 for all of them is fine.
I don't know if I agree with you on that one.
I don't know. I'm just using an overarching philosophy of the individual quality of like consistency doesn't really matter that much. I think consistency should cost something, but it should be cheap so that only the quote unquote weaker decks have access to it. I don't care if you make Tenki 10 and 7 Tachyon 12. I mean, they can, but I don't care.
Sure, I agree with you in some way, but like Fossil Dig and Tenki being the same points, like, I don't know about that, bro. I don't know.
Why not?
Because like Fossil Dig isn't once per turn. You have to evaluate its points across cards like Misk. Like the Fossil Dig is on. I don't know. I think that there are.
I mean, okay, Fossil Dig is a much more. I think I don't know if Fossil Dig is the greatest one because that I feel like even though it's technically a generic searcher, there's not that many different Dino decks. So it's more like the card is
okay. I see what you're saying.
tied to a deck, I think.
Yeah. So okay. So you're saying if the more generic a card is, the more generic a search spell is, the more it should fit into just blanket consistency tool point values of like 10 or whatever the value is.
I mean, even here, like if someone is doing crazy shit with Fossil Dig into Misk, I don't think Fossil Dig is the problem.
You think Misk is the problem?
Yes, and I don't think it matters if Fossil Dig is 10 or 15 or 20 points. Like if someone is activating Fossil Dig, grabbing Misk and doing crazy shit with it, then put points on that.
Let me stew on that one.
Because like
I know it falls into your philosophy
like a random random for hire deck to have Fossil Dig. I mean, for hire is a bad example because it's a link mostly a link deck, but why wouldn't a random deck that isn't good that just happens to have like a dinosaur, why wouldn't that have access to 3 Fossil Dig? Just because it's not once per turn, or because it could search miscellaneous source in another deck? Like, why does that matter?
Okay, all right, you're bringing me over to your side a little bit, but I'm still gonna stew on that. I agree with your broader philosophy. Is it's never the consistency of the problem, it's the problem itself. Like I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I just don't know if for consistency search spells, I 100% agree. But again, I'll think about that a little bit in practice.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they should never be free because then the broken stuff, the broken decks have access to it for free. But I think the sweet spot is definitely not 18 to 20. Like that's not happening. Like
I'll agree with you on there.
A non-meta deck that has warriors in it is not going to play 3 Rhodas for 54 points. That's outrageous.
Yeah. When has Deep Sea Aria ever seen play, by the way?
Never. Mermail sometimes played it to search Neptibus.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. I think the direction here is good. I mean, we don't have to argue about the nuance on whether Tenki should have 12 and 7 Tachyon should have 10, but I think somewhere around 10 is the sweet spot for me for searchers. If you want to make like a slightly better one because of less downsides, if you want to make it slightly more expensive or less expensive because it has downsides like Tenki, I think that's fine. But I ultimately think it doesn't matter in the greater scheme of like whether Fossil Dig is 18 or 15 or whatever.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah, I like the things that are happening on this points update. I was very positive about it. I think we're doing a lot of the right things. We're, as usual, not doing quite enough of what I would do because I always think like the more stuff you do, the more exciting it is, and the better for the format. Like we talked about already, like probably like 5 different decks that can definitely be way reduced in points in order to actually fulfill the promise of you can play your favorite deck and there's a smaller gap between it and the best decks of the format. I don't think it's reasonable to expect your deck to always beat the newest decks in the game, because I think that's like what I mean. There's always going to be a meta game in Genesis format.
Yep.
Just like in Advanced, like it's a competitive setting, and in a competitive setting, people are going to try to optimize and they're going to find something that's the best. And newer decks do have a tendency to be stronger because there's power creep happening in Advanced constructed format, and they're making the cards primary for that format. But I do think there should be just a little bit more leeway on older cards and just a little bit more points on newer.
Yep. I think if I had to summarize my overall feelings of this format, it's that there are 2 macro level criticisms, which are the reluctance to call out and point the floodgate style cards that are in the side deck, and the tepidness of removing points on older modern decks. I think those are like the 2 biggest downfalls. And those are absolutely valid criticisms that we as a community should continue to be vocal about, right? Totally agree. However, I love this format. I've had an absolute blast. I've seen a lot of success in this format, playing stupid archetype piles that I enjoy. It is extremely fun. It's gotten so much better since it started. Those 2 criticisms and your initial experience of the format should not stop you from jumping back in and trying again. I think it is in a great spot. It's continuing to get better, as evidenced by this point list. And just try it again if you can. If you have if you have a locals around you that has Genesis, you'd be one of the lucky few, sure. If you are going to a tier 3 event and you are able to join this format, give it a shot. Then like just try it again. I absolutely empathize with people's criticisms of the format that they had initially, and that, those 2 points I mentioned before. But have fun, deck build. If you think a deck is too outpointed, try, just experiment. It really is a great format, and it's in a good spot. So that's my overall
I have one last question for you, because someone just raised it in the chat again, and I was going to ask it earlier, but then I forgot. Because of all the pet deck things we talked about earlier, do you think it was a mistake to ban Link and Pend?
Gosh, that's a very good question that I'm still trying to find an answer to.
Yeah.
Because I think banning links it does have what I, at this point now, would call a positive impact on the format.
Yes.
Because if you have link monsters in the format, like you do in Advance, every single monster card has additional text on it.
Yes,
right?
I've been saying this too. It makes it so much more complex. It makes the knowledge you need so much bigger.
Because every single effect monster in the game says you can send this card and one other effect monster to the graveyard to special summon SP Little Knight from your extra deck. Every card has that. Every effect monster has that text on it, Now, do I think links are a net negative for Yu-Gi-Oh? No. I mean, I still play Advance. I still enjoy it. Like, no, they're fun. But the inability to play them in Genesis absolutely has a measurable impact on the format. The fact that you can't like use an extra deck monster's effect and then use it as a link material. I remember when Genesis format was announced, people were like, oh, I'm going to play Adamancipator. Adamancipator's crazy, and I can summon Gallant Granite and search. And then the fact that you couldn't do anything with the Gallant Granite was like a massive detriment to that deck. Even though it seems like something that shouldn't have much of an impact, it was hugely impactful on what Adamancipator was able to do. And Adamancipator has not performed, I feel, because of that aspect, right? So I think it is good that there are no link monsters in that sense. I understand the frustration of certain decks not being playable due to the lack of their link monster.
Yes.
I disagree with the number of decks that are unplayable. I even think decks like Plunder Patrol are... I have a Plunder Patrol list that I've been testing that I feel is very good. I might even take it to an event. I think the viability of decks without their link monster is higher than people give credit for, is what I will say.
Yeah.
Now obviously, I know this is still the case for something like Valmonica. I'll never be able to make Valmonica playable.
Yep.
Nobody will. It's
Yep.
just the sad reality of the format.
Mhm.
But the lower complexity and the lower ceiling that no links and pens offers to the format, I have decided through my time playing it is a net positive.
Yes, and I agree with that. I do think, and this one is a 100% subjective thing. I feel like, where for me personally, I don't really miss links or pendulums for any of my pet decks. I mean, okay, maybe the closest one is like Salamangrate or something like that, where I would love a balanced version of Salamangrate in Genesis format. I think a playstyle like that would be perfect for that format. But I can live without it, and I think gameplay wise, all the positives of not having those cards absolutely outweighs the negatives for me.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
by a landslide. However, it's I do not like how it does, like, kind of invalidate, not entirely, but it does invalidate a little bit this. If you have a favorite deck, you can have it be a little bit more competitive over here. Not for me personally, but it invalidates it for other people, right? And it's like, I think if you want to make an alternative format, you want to make it as like inclusive as possible. And I do think that, you know, with a lot of effort, they could have made sure that both of those mechanics can exist in the format and are just like very heavily balanced.
Yeah,
like they would just, it would take a lot of work to make Pendulum and Link exist within Genesis format, because you want to make sure the decks are not doing too much. And if every single deck has the option to summon Link monsters, it becomes very easy for decks to suddenly do too much. So from a balancing perspective, the format is better off without them. And I think the same can be said about Advanced Constructed. I think from a balancing perspective, both of those mechanics have been a net negative for Yu-Gi-Oh! But if you want to make a format where people can play their pet decks, if that's really your goal, then they did exclude like a couple of people who just happen to have a Link or Pendulum deck as their pet decks. And as an old head, this is hard to accept, but those are 11 years of Yu-Gi-Oh at this point, right? That they are basically excluding decks from.
Yeah, that is, I think people are right when they say that this, removing links and pens and your favorite deck can be playable. Those are statements that are just naturally at odds with each other. That is an unfortunate reality of that.
Yep.
I'm with you that I think the balancing aspect does outweigh that. And if they were going to introduce links and pens into the format, I think they would have to have, I don't know how they would do it. But they would have to
point, I think at some point it's just, you got to say it's too late. Like, they made this thing, they worked on it for a very long time, and now you're starting to build a fan base for it, and that's what's happening right now. The format isn't coming right out the gate swinging, but it's like a slow build up. And the more people try it, the more people I see try it, the more people like it. And like, I think fundamentally changing it now, I think is kind of gonna ruin their progress. I think if they did it from the beginning, I think it would have been completely fine. I think no one would have questioned it. If they just said like, hey, we're going to try a different balancing model, a point system, it's going to be a separate format. I think that would have been fine. No one would have been asking about them to remove Pendulum and Links, but because they made it like that, I think it's too late to go back.
Yeah, it would be like, they aren't going to do this. North do I think they should, but like speculating on it, I think you could only allow archetypes to play their respective Links and Pendulum monsters. I don't know how you address that. I don't know how you have to play this certain number of cards. There's just no way. Like, I don't know. Maybe they do, but again, they're not going to do that. Nor do I think they should. And the fact that Links and Pens are in the format,
there's a lot of fun thought experiments to be had. Like, you could have a Link monster have a points value. That's probably too complicated, but what I was thinking is like, your Link monster has like an absurd point value, but it gets lower the more cards of the archetype you play. Like, you have like Electromite gets cheaper. Electromite gets cheaper the more Metal Foes you play, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that is an interesting. There's plenty of thought experiments we would have about it, but at the end of the day,
but then people just play combo slot Pendulum decks and they side 15 Metal Foes so they can play Electromite for free.
I think that would suck ass.
Yeah. No, people would do that. They would.
Yeah, that's true. They would. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. Anyways, I think there's a lot of fun thought experiments to be had. But for me personally, if I had to all like narrow it down, or like a conclusion that I'm getting to is, I think Genesis format has come a long way. And if I had to describe it, like I said earlier, to me it feels like a lot of the things that frustrate me the most about Advanced Constructed are almost fixed in Genesis format. And I say almost because I'm aware that the format isn't perfect. It's not perfect. It has flaws. There still is some floodgates. There still is some stuff going on that where decks are sometimes too strong. This is just something that happens in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! But the gap between the decks that I enjoy to play and the decks that I'm going up against is much smaller. The way it feels to play against these decks is very different to me. And I just really hope that they keep working on the little flaws that they have left. And I really hope that people give it a fair chance and don't just form their opinion based on very surface level observations that they make or that other people make online without actually having properly played the format. Because whenever I play it so far, whenever I play this format, I have a very, very different experience than what people describe it as online when they post their negative like takes on it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like there was not a single hand trap in the deck that I made top 64 with. And in day one, I lost 6 out of my 8 die rolls at Minneapolis. You know, like I get that that's anecdotal, but like I don't know what to tell you. My experience with going second in this format
to an extent, it's something that's also fair enough, because there are at the moment, and this is hopefully about to change, but there aren't enough ways for people to play Genesis format, I suppose, right? Like how are people going to form their opinion if they don't have a locals for it and there aren't no regionals yet? And the one event that they get to do is like a YCS maybe, where the YCS, you could argue, is like the worst place to actually get into the format, because that's where people are going to be the most tryhard naturally, right? Like you're going to experience more diversity and more stuff at every other level of tournament than a YCS, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, even at a YCS, like for maybe if you are experienced with the format and you understand how it goes and you understand all the decks, then maybe you can cook up something to shake up the metagame at a YCS that isn't currently a top meta, or maybe you can build your pet deck in the best possible way to deal with the meta decks. But if you're just getting started and you're trying out the format for the first time, and then you're sitting across from people who try hard at a YCS, obviously it's going to seem like, I don't know, Blitzclick way too strong.
Yeah.
Because they've optimized their deck, they've optimized their Blitzclick strategy, and you're just out there experimenting for the very first time with the format. Like, yeah, of course, it's doomed to not work. It's like when you tell someone to try Advanced Constructed, you also don't tell them to go play a YCS.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the local, I think, when the regional scene starts up, that's going to be a huge benefit to the format.
Yeah.
Huge benefit. Just more places to play. Like, that's really what the format will need.
And I'm honestly, I'm shocked to hear sometimes how little locals are actually doing, because I can only speak from my experience, and I kind of feel lucky in that sense now that I'm hearing all these other people talk about it. But my locals very naturally started Genesis immediately when the format came out, because there was a lot of other people who were very excited about it, and so we started doing it. And it's not putting up the same numbers as Advanced Constructed, but it's very solid. Like, we get 10 plus players every week on a Wednesday night to play Genesis, which is not bad.
Yeah. When the regional scene kicks up and people are traveling to more regionals, I think that'll get more people interested in like starting locals for the format. I think that's like, because like the regional scene is super important. I know a lot of people will like scoff at regional results or whatever in comparison to YCSs, but like the regional scene is super important for the game, and sometimes a regional is a player's like biggest event, right?
Yeah.
In NA, our regionals will consistently get to like 300 to 500 people, you know?
Yeah.
And people will make the travel time to go to a regional, but will never go to a YCS. And I think that with Genesis being having that regional circuit, that's going to help the format grow.
I'm a little worried about the YCS Genesis events personally, because, and I noticed this myself, I bought a ticket for YCS Paris like last week, And I was like, because I was very positively surprised by the Genesis event at the EUWCQ having like, I think 350 players. I thought that was pretty cool. And then when I bought the ticket for YCS Paris, I realized, oh, they're doing this Friday and Sunday, so you could technically play both, but you do have to pay $45 now to play it.
I think they need to address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to do something about that, because you have to pay $45 for both, and then if you choose not to do day 2, you just like if you make day 2 for both, which is possible and people do.
Yeah.
And then you just like lost $45 for one. I think that
I feel like it should just be $45 for like a ticket to the YCS, and you get both in that. But you only get you only get your entry pack once. You only get your like coin once, but you get to play both events. I feel like is how it should be.
Yeah, or they do like a bundle, right? So it's like you can pay $45 to enter one event, or if you enter both, you pay
like 60.
I don't know, 60. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because I was like, it was the same thing for me, because like at the European Championship, it was like I was obviously going to play Genesis. I knew that because it was free. I was like, I'll just play it. Why not? But I noticed that I didn't have enough time to properly prep for it because I was so focused on like the European Championship main event that in hindsight, I was like, yeah, I didn't really have a chance here. Like I just wasn't well prepared. I just brought a deck with no testing. But it was whatever, because why not? It was the Friday. Who cares? And when I bought my ticket for YCS Paris, I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to hold off on buying this Genesis ticket because I don't know yet if I'm going to have the time to properly prepare for it. And $45 is that's a decent commitment. I don't know if I want to do that. And I don't think I'm alone with that. I don't think I'm alone with that, especially when you, like you said, you have to choose which day 2 you play. So even if you do well in one of them, or if you do well in both, you have to choose one of them. You don't get the full experience, quote unquote, on both of them. And so I feel like maybe we should treat YCS as more as like an overall convention for all formats and just have like one ticket that gets you into both tournaments. Because I feel like, especially with Genesis, I think they want people to try this. I hope, right? They want people to mess around with this format. So I don't think. I mean, the pricing is the same as the main event, so on you can make arguments for it. But at the same time, if you want to advertise this format, if you want people to experience it, I think creating this barrier to entry is not the right way to do it.
I think, they need to be real with themselves. Community sentiment is not there yet for people to justify paying $45 to enter Genesis and Advanced. Like, I can do all the advocacy for the format I want, but right now, community sentiment is in backing of the format just isn't there. I think they need to be real with themselves on that and understand people aren't gonna make that financial investment to play the format yet. And honestly, the financial structure around it should be changed in general, because playing in Genesis means you have to get an extra day of lodging most of the time, and your travel time change. Like it just makes it more expensive to play in both tournaments outside of getting tickets for both. So the cost structure absolutely need to change, especially in the EU, because in EU it's 45 to enter. In NA it's still 25.
I would argue it's 25 is better than 45. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I would argue in EU the extra day doesn't matter that much because the venue is open anyways on Friday. It was always open.
I'm talking about for the players, right? For players to like get a hotel if they need to.
Yeah, I know, but like European YCSs always have events on Fridays.
Oh, right. Sorry, America brained. We didn't have that.
Because that's what I mean. Like, I mean, of course, the Friday wasn't mandatory for people who were just trying to attend the main event. You could arrive on Friday and it was no problem. But there are a lot of side events on Friday already. So the normal thing in Europe is to like travel there on the Thursday already.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that in that sense, it's not that big of a change. The only difference is you have to be there by like 9 in the morning if you want to be doing Genesis in the EU. And some people would like arrive like Friday morning usually. So they would have to
in order to check in. In order to check in for Genesis now, you do have to be there on Thursday though.
Wait, for NA?
Dude,
I don't know why you guys are doing check-ins. That's crazy.
Dude, oh my god, I don't understand. I really don't understand. It's this is a total different thing that I could spend another whole hour complaining about. But the way administrative stuff is handled for NA YCS is like mind-boggling. It's like I'm in the 1940s. I have to like I'm gonna go get my paper and then show up to check in person for my event. Like, yeah, see, like oh my god, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. Wait, you have to be there
Yeah.
on Thursday to check in for Genesis? Is insane. Okay.
Yes. Why? I mean, if we just had Neuron and we just checked in with Neuron, I'm gonna stop myself because I'm gonna take another hour of your stream. I don't need to do that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, well,
All
I
right.
mean, I enjoyed this a lot. I had a fun time at Genesis Locals, and I really wanted to talk about it. So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
And I'll set you free now. You go live your day, and I will go
Yep.
finish my day because we are approaching dinner time over here. So yeah,
Yep.
thanks for the discussion. It was a good talk. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yep, I absolutely did. I love talking about this format. I'm going to say it again, chat. I'm not sponsored to talk about it. I just make content about it. I like it a lot, and I think it absolutely has improved from its initial state, regardless of the current criticisms I still have. If you can, please try it out. If you can try to get like a scene together to run the tournaments, please do what you can to do it because it is super fun. Still needs improvements, but it is in a great spot. So, okay, there you go. That's my last spiel.
All right, and when
Peace out, everybody.
now that you're a full-time content creator, if you ever want to do like a Genesis collab, then feel free to hit me up. Later next month I have to build BA for Genesis locals because Farfa challenged me to win Genesis locals with BA, and I said that is 100% possible. That doesn't even seem that difficult. BA seems
it's not that difficult with tour guide at 0 now. Oh, we're in. Like
I don't know if we need tour guide, dude. It's not a purple card.
That. Oh, I forgot who I was talking to. My bad.
Ooh,
All right,
we're copying Fire Lake with rollback. What do you mean?
Okay. Never mind. All right, you have a good stream.
All right, peace.
Bye.